Good evening. I'd like to say, Kavod Elo, we say the Doved Hashem Oivi, Kavel Hashem, Chazak v'yamitz libecho, v'kavel Hashem. Dozens of Meforshim are bothered by the question, why is it repeated? Kavel Hashem, hope for Hashem, Chazak v'yamitz libecho, v'kavel Hashem. Why is it repeated? So very nice pshat. I think the Chosid Yaivitz is like this. Let's say I need a pen. So I ask Chaim, will you lend me a pen? And he doesn't give me a pen. So what's the next thing? I go to somebody else. He doesn't give me a pen, I go to somebody else. But if I need something specific, which I know only one person can give it, let's say I've got this toothache and somebody here is a dentist. So then that person doesn't give it to me. I'm not going to go to the next person and say, oh, maybe you'll provide it for me. Because I know that only the dentist can help me. Sometimes you see a person is in struggle, the child's not well, and you speak to the doctor. I'm going to say, if I can't speak to the doctor, so I'll speak to the cleaner there or somebody else in the hospital. You're desperate. Klal Yisrael know, Kavel Hashem, hope for Hashem. That's who you should put your trust in. Don't think that if it doesn't work out with Hashem, okay, doesn't matter, so I'll go for somebody else. No. There's only one address you can ever go to. So if it doesn't work out with Hashem the first time, don't think that now, okay, if you daven to Hashem and never works, I'll go and find myself another method. It isn't. The Kavel Hashem, this is the only address you can ever go back to. Okay. We're up to Tezayin Amud Aleph, 4 lines from the top. It's now 22. Yesterday we started a very important topic, and the topic was Paul's Koimet. That means if you got a wall, which is exactly Paul's Koimet. Today I'm bringing a bit of Pirush Chai because I saw some of the pictures and this is good, but this is slightly better. I'm going to show you a small picture. It's not a major picture. It's not as colorful. But can you see this is something called Paul's Koimet? I just want to point it out because it comes up much later. And I was trying to explain somebody who struggled with it. This, I haven't got a picture of it, but imagine this. This is called vertical pillars, vertical panels. Now imagine horizontal panels. What would you say? Would you say they are better or worse as a wall? What would you say?
Worse.
Why would you say the worst?
Gaps.
But this is also gaps.
Not in the ground.
I'd say it's better.
Yeah, this looks a little bit like it. If it's not mamish, can you see from down there?
You can walk through those, you can't walk through them down.
Right, I just want to say that technically it's worse. I'm sorry, but I want to say one piece of logic. This looks like walls with doorways and entranceways. This, but it's not a good picture, but imagine this horizontal. It looks like gaps in the wall. This looks like doorways with entranceways. So that's fine. Like, you've got a wall. This roof, for example, you've got an entranceway here, entranceway there. It doesn't matter. Explore the roof. Okay, I don't want to bring it up for later. Again, if it's Paul's Koimid, if it's exactly 50-50, so we had the Machlokas HaMoiroim. Machlokas HaMoiroim wants the halacha. And now the Gemara is going to try and prove it. Now the Gemara is going to bring a proof from a brisa which is talking about kilaim. The halacha is with kilaim, we once mentioned this very briefly, you have to keep a gap of at least 4 amos. If you have a wall, you don't have to keep a gap at all. So I can plant wheat all the way to this wall, and then somebody else can plant, or even I can plant grapes all the way to that wall, and there's only like 3 centimeters gap, and that's fine. The same halachas that is a wall for a mavui and for a chotza is the same halachas of a wall for kilayim. So this brayso is not talking at all about Hilchas Shabbos. It doesn't matter, because whatever works for a wall in Hilchas Kilayim will work for Hilchas Shabbos. I'm going to say something with outside. The brayso differentiates between 3 kinds of these panels. 3 kinds of panels. You've got very, very thin ones, medium-sized ones, and very wide ones. Here, can you see very wide ones? Can you see? It's not so hard to imagine. Ones which are like literally like sticks. Ones which are 3 to 4 tefachim wide. That's a panel about this wide. And then much larger panels. The brayso tells us 3, each one has its own set of halachas. The very, very briefly outside, because it's quite sticks, if you put them less than 3 tefachim gap, it's considered lovut. If it's considered lovut, so therefore, in fact, you can actually have a whole wall round, and you've got a proper wall with only having tiny, tiny sticks. Can you see over here? This is the first picture. You've got tiny, tiny sticks, and it's considered the proper wall. As I mentioned to you many times, I mention again, that as a child, for pilchim outing on sukkahs, this is our dream, to build a sukkah like that. Take sticks and make it. If you want to see, it's later in one of the pictures. Let me just show you the pictures in the back, because here you've got those pictures. Where is the page? Sorry. Yes, so over here, if you look at picture Kuf Samach Gimel, just like it's a nice little picture, maybe give you nice nostalgic memories. Kuf Samach Gimel. And what is that picture of? It's a picture of a kosher. It's not. It's meant for kilayim, but never mind. The fact is, it's a sukkah, right? That's a good sukkah. If you want to make some very, very cheap sukkah, buy reeds, go crisscross, and you've got a beautiful sukkah, and you can carry the whole contraption with you on the holiday. All you need to do is take with you 10 sticks this way, 10 sticks the other way, and you've got yourself a nice wall. So that is one kind. That is the one category. The last category, we'll go first to the last category, is big panels. Big panels. So then, as long as the majority is closed, it's good enough. And here we'll come to a chiddush, that even when it's not majority closed, you're allowed to plant, if you get this clear, you're allowed to plant opposite the panel. That means, if let's say you've got one panel here, then a gap here, and one panel there, and you could say, well, look, this wall is very weak. It's got half panels, half of spaces. But opposite the actual panel, you can plant wheat. I can plant wheat on one side and grapes on the other, because the panel is so significant, it's so big, that it's considered a wall. The in-between stage, you don't have that halacha. Since it's only 3-4 tvachim wide, and if in a case where it's not a proper wall, you can't plant opposite the panels. Why can't you plant opposite the panels? Because the panels are so thin, they're only 3-4 tvachim wide. Like these, you can't plant grapes on one side and wheat on the other, because they're very shvacha panels. Now, this whole vaisa, the ikar reason we bring it is because when we talk about pos koimed, which is the question we started off with, when something's exactly 50-50, if you look carefully in the vaisa, you will see a few diyukim regarding this question. And that will be a raya to our question. Most like this, Toshima, 5th line from Tesanim Dara from the top. Nimsis at comes out as follows. Sholish midos b'mechitzas. There are 3 kinds of mechitzas. Kol shu, if it's tiny ones, pochis mishloisha, as long as there's less than 3 tvachim between them, tzorich sheben zelazeh shloisha. As long as there's no 3 tvachim in between, if it's more than 3 tvachim, it's not lovud, because a goat can get through, and therefore it's not a wall. And if you got sticks and it's more than 3 tvachim, it's no good. Kol shu shloisha mishloisha ad arba, if it's 3 tvachim or 3 to 4 tvachim, there mustn't be the same gap as its width. What would you say from over here? What would you medaik? It mustn't have a gap as big as the panel. It's mashed with a pose coming is no good, because it says 50-50. If it's exactly the panel, you need a bit more. Because there should be pose coming, because pose is no good. If pose is more than the oimed, also, you're not allowed to plant even kneged the oimed. If it's 4 tvachim or arba, the 10 amos up to 10 amos, you mustn't have a gap as big as the panel. Again, you see pose coming is no good. Pose coming kneged the oimed, mutter, opposite the oimed, it is mutter. Kneged the povutz also. B'moya oimed, meruba la povutz, af kneged the povutz mutter. So I should make another line before. It says, I'm sorry, when we came to the line before, it says, going back to the second case, if poets is more than the oimed, also. It says, both way around, the opposite, it's self-contradictory. First it says it shouldn't be 50-50, and then if it says poets then it's no good, which is a steer. The more discusses all this in a minute. If there's a gap more than 10 amos, then also the whole thing is also. Why is it also? Because you've got a gap more than 10 amos, that's not considered the entrance, it's considered a pilza. If you've got sticks stuck in the ground, and you make it a vine or branch going around, if it's more than 10 amos, it's mutter. Here, this is the picture over here. I don't know if you can see it. And what happened was you had the panels, a nice wall, and suddenly it fell in more than 10 amos. So you just stuck one stick on one side, one stick on the other, and you made like a string across. So that's called the Tzuras HaPesach, and that's okay. So that's the end of this Bryce. The Bryce is categorized 3 different sizes. Sticks, which you have to make sure less than 3 tvachim. Panels which are very big, which you have to make sure there's no tenamus gap and it's not post mobile limit. And you've got 3 and 4 tvachim, which the Gemara says it's as long as it's mobile parts, it's okay. If it's not, you can't even plant opposite the panel because the panel is so small. And the lotion of the Bryce, and sometimes it speaks about the fact that it's no good, which is mashma, that if it's 50-50, it's okay. And sometimes it says, don't let it be 50-50, which is mashma, that 50-50 is no good. So the Bryce is self-contradictory. So most like this, in the beginning it says, there mustn't be a gap as big as this, the wood itself. That if you put a panel, you can never get a panel exactly in and out. So you have to have a bit more space. It says, if it says reports is more than the oimate, then even the kneged oimate is also, which is meduyik, that oimate, if it's exactly the same as the oimate, mutter. Shmami, no, it's a raya that if it's post oimate, it's okay, because the Bryce says if post meruba oimate, it's no good. Mashma, if it's exactly the same as okay. It says, well, limit have to do a Yeshua. So now we've got a steer from the latter half of the Bryce that gives one of Yeshua. For the beginning half of the Bryce that says you mustn't have exactly the same. It's mashma post komet is no good. And then later in the Bryce it says post meruba loimid is no good. Is meduik. If it's exactly the same, it's okay. It's mashma if only if oimid meruba, the last part of the Bryce, the third expression of the Bryce, it says oimid meruba. Also. So also Sefer Kasha Papa, Reish Kasha Yeshua. If you look carefully in the Bryce, I go through it again. The Bryce at one stage says it's no good, and the next stage it says then it's okay. I've got still what about 50-50? And the more outside very briefly, the more just says that each man the Omar will explain that the Bryce which is difficult on him is lav dafka, and the Bryce borrowed that expression to contrast it to the other way around. That means, according to Mandama, the 50-50 is okay. So when it's oimid, when it's post meruba lo oimid, it's no good. And then to contrast it, we say post meruba lo oimid is oimid meruba lo post is okay. And according to the other Mandama, where 50-50 is no good, so then oimid meruba lo post, when it's mostly standing, is good. And then to contrast it, we have to say post meruba. That means the emes from this Bryce you can't medayek anything, because the Bryce only talks about when it's more this way or more that way, and the Bryce used the lashon for one according to to contrast it from the other, and only one of them is dafka. So the says like this: Sefer to a papa lo kasha. The sefer to a papa is not to kasha. Either tanavesha pots meruba lo oimid, tanah sefer oimid meruba lo pots. Since in the Vesha we want to talk about where it's no good, and therefore we talked about pots meruba lo oimid. Therefore we have to say in the sefer oimid meruba lo pots. Vesha of the bed of sholo kasha. I did put Mr. Sefer meruba lo pots that is okay. Tanavesha pots meruba lo oimid that's not okay. So the Gemara says like this: you've got no right from this Bryce, and the reason the Bryce uses expression is just to contrast it from the other case. So now, in a case where it is 3 tefachim exactly, and there's gaps of 3 tefachim between each one, 3 tefachim panels, and exactly gaps of 3 tefachim, what would the halacha be? Panels which are 3 tefachim, each one's 3 tefachim, and next to them there are gaps exactly 3 tefachim. What would the halacha be? What? Which is, what's the halacha? That's machlikas of one of the and proper. If you've got sticks which are very thin, and they have 3 tefachim gap in between them, what's the halacha? No, 3 tefachim. No. If you got 3 tefachim gap, it's no good because it's not lovud. Lovud is slightly less than 3 tefachim. So now, if you hold that Paul's Goyimid is that 50-50 is no good, it comes out halachically speaking, there's absolutely no difference between sticks that have 3 tefachim gap and 3 tefachim panels that have 3 tefachim gaps. When it's a stick and it's got 3 tefachim gap, it's no good because you don't say lovud. When it's a 3 tefachim panel and it's got a 3 tefachim gap, why is it no good? Because Paul's Goyimid. So therefore, only when it's less than 3 tefachim. Yes, if you're right, it comes out an interesting thing. that if you got sticks which are less than 3 tvachim apart, they are better than panels which are wider, but pots mubalimid would be no good. That means with sticks you can actually have pots mubalimid. You can have more gaps. You can have more gaps than sticks with sticks because of the svav lovud. Because lovud makes it that it's not really a gap. That's the answer. You understand? That when you've got a lot of sticks next to each other, so 2.5. Why not?
You would think that the more you.
I know, but these sticks over here, we consider them to be as if it's got no gap at all because there's less than 3 tvachim. Here, when there's 3 tvachim gaps, so now there's proper gaps. But going back to the point I want to point out like this, it comes out that if your post goyimid is of no good, there's no halachic difference between sticks that have 3 tvachim gap and panels which are 3 tvachim that have 3 tvachim gap, because both will be awesome. When it's sticks that have 3 tvachim gap, it's no good because there's no lovut. When it's 3 tvachim panels that have 3 tvachim gap, it's no good because it's post goyimid. Which then brings up the question, why did the Brisa split up into 3 categories? The Brisa could have talked about the first and the second category in the same expression. It says the word like this. He holds that it is okay, 3 tvachim and 3 tvachim, same Brisa can mix it up. You should say it together. Sticks that are less than 3 or 3 tvachim panels, there must be 3. Answers the Gemara, no. The reason we don't put them together is because they're coming from a different halachic perspective. When there's a stick with a 3 tvachim gap, the problem is because of lovut. When there's 3 tvachim panels and 3 tvachim space, the problem is because koimid. Says the one, no. It's not the same psul. Psula dereisha we don't want to go to get in, and that spoils it lovut. So the sefer shlei pos koimid because we don't want to have pos koimid. Therefore, since it's not the same logic, it's not the same halacha. We don't put them together. Now, one more final point. We're going to actually this Brisa as follows. Lovud, how wide is Lovud? What's the size for Lovud? 3 or 4. This Brisa is going to man Omar? 3. Very good. Now, the logic of Lovud is that less than 3 tvachim is so insignificant that it's as if it's not there. So if you got 2 sticks, less than 3 tvachim is not. Similarly, if you hold 4 tvachim, that's already a significant thing, and therefore you can't say lovud. That's a significant gap. Logically speaking, it should follow that when the Brisa it talks about planting kilayim when there's a panel and there's a space next to it. And we said, when it's a very big panel, even if the space is next to it, you're allowed to plant by the panel. Why? Because we look at it, that panel is a wall, so there you can plant grapes to one side of the panel and wheat to the other. Where there'll be a gap, you won't. But if it's a very small panel, let's say not a significant panel, then you're not allowed to, because then we have to look at the whole area and decide, is this considered an enclosure or not an enclosure? Says the Gemara, the logic should be that the same machlokas, if lovud is 3 or 4, should be the same machlokas what's considered the significant panel, 3 or 4. And this Brisa, therefore, is self-contradictory. Why? Regarding lovud, it says 3 tvachim. Regarding what's considered a proper panel, in order that you should be able to plant on one side wheat, on the other side grapes, what is the size of a panel? 4 tvachim and above. Now, I don't understand you. If you say that 3 tvachim is a proper measurement, so once you have a panel of 3, let me plant grapes on one side and wheat on the other. Because you just said that if lovud is only up to 3 tvachim, you answer it because you hold that lovud is a significant measure. If it's a significant measure, let me plant grapes and wheat up to each other.
One's a measure to get rid of a gap. One's a measure to give you a cheshivah.
Right. The Gemara actually says your answer. Very good. The Gemara says your answer, but Rav doesn't agree with it. But you hear the question at least. The question is, the Brisa says that we're going according to Tanakama of Shmuel Gamliel, that says that lovud is 3, not 4. And yet the Brisa, when it wants us to find a gap, that means a panel that you can't plant on either side, it says find one which is more than 4 tvachim. Why more than 4 tvachim? Let it be more than 3 tvachim. Once it's 3 tvachim, it's important. It says the Gemara, Pochus v'shloisha mani, who's the spice going like a bonani? The Omri, Pochus v'shloisha minon lovud. Shloisha lo minon lovud. By 3 tvachim, you don't say it's lovud. They must say, because shloisha v'shloisha v'adar bo, top of the Zayin base, also in the Shugam Leo, Doma, Pochus v'abo lovud. That goes according to Shugam Leo, that says lesson 4 is lovud. They hold that once it's 3 tvachim, it's considered a proper measure. If it's a proper measure, so then let me plant wheat on one side and grapes on another. It's a proper panel. 3 tvachim is a proper issue. Mamish like what you just said. Let me take this. Regarding to make it that it's not a gap, it has to be less than 3 tvachim. If you've got sticks, and there's less than 3 tvachim in between, then that's considered not a gap. More than 3 tvachim is a gap. But to say that I want to plant grapes on one side and wheat on the other, and say, well, look, I've got a panel in between. No. From that, we need 4 tvachim and more. Less than 4 tvachim, we don't consider it a proper wall to consider it a hefsek. So therefore, even though the Gabe Lovod we say 3, the Gabe a wall we say 4. Rava says not like that. With the Sefer Shum Gamliel, since the Sefer which says you need a 4 tvachim panel, that's a Shum Gamliel. Shum Gamliel. Oh, according to Shum Gamliel, how big is Lovod? 4. So why did the Vaisa speak about 3? That's only very high. When it's by the floor, at the floor stage, we don't say lavud because when do we say lavud? If you've got at the top over here a gap in the wall. But on the floor, we can't say lavud because once goats can get in, that's not considered a wall. Toshma, one final proof regarding this main question of 50-50. Most of the wall is made out of entrances and windows. Mutter. As long as it's more standing than pots. Now this price says doesn't make any sense. It starts off saying if a wall is majority windows, it's okay, as long as most of it is standing. Well, if majority is windows, this wall, for example, ignore the top and the bottom, it says majority windows. Of course not. So how can the price say if majority windows is okay, but it has to be Omed Muba? Doesn't make any sense. As long as there's a lot of windows, that doesn't matter as long as most of it is standing. So this would not be good. If it's exactly 50-50, it's also to Yufta do a proper to Yufta. It's a kasha not proper. The Hilchas Sekvos are proper. Pass like it says, well, how do you better make it work? To Yufta, what Vaisa would prove that proper is wrong. The Hilchas and then you pass can like him. That doesn't work. You just bought a price that says befurish that if it has to be made if it's 50-50, it's no good. And then you say we pass that's okay. As well, and yes. So the Daikim Asisa Kavasi, our last Mishnah was very meduic like him. Why? There should be more gaps than building. Okay, binyan mutter, if it's exactly the same as mutter. And even though the Gemara found a dichui, the Gemara pushed it away by saying that it can mean that that is kabinyan is the same as merubal binyan. The Gemara itself already asked the kasha, the Mishnah should have said so. So since the Mishnah is meduic like a papa, we pass like a papa. So if you've got a wall which is 50 standing, 50 not, it is okay. You've come on a very, very hard day. I don't know, because next Mishnah is not much easier, but it's what? Yes, I know. But now this is the exciting part. You want to make yourself a cheap wall? What do? You take 3 ropes and you set it up. How are you going to set it up? What would you do? Right. You wait from the ground, you go up how much? Just under 3, very good. You put a rope. You will skip out, just under 3, put another rope. Just under 3 and put another rope. How thick, and you only 3 ropes we're talking about, how high would that be? Oh, how thick would the rope have to be? How thick would the rope have to be? If you can work it out, you'll get...
A third of a
Right, you're almost exact.
10. Okay, just over.
How much more?
Well, how much less than 3 does it need to be?
So say the exact formula. You're very close. No. You said it right. The rope altogether has to be the thickness of a tefach, because you're 3 gaps, plus 3 mashahus, Rashi says. Because you've got 3 bits. Because you miss out from the ground 3 tvachim, a tiny bit less, you put the rope. 3 tvachim, a tiny bit less, and you put the rope. 3 tvachim, a tiny bit less. So it has to be, each one has to be, all together, the rope has to be a tefach and 3 mashus.
Can you vary?
Yeah. The rope, if the rope is not a tefach, you won't get to 10 tvachim.
Each part of the rope add up.
Right, if all, that's right, the rope all together has to be a tefach. That's right. Yes, there can be different thicknesses. So that's how you have to do it. That's the only way to do it. Yeah, you've got it clear. I hope the picture's clear in your mind. No, it doesn't have a clear picture.
What about what the white
Again, later we're having it. Later, that's next more. It's complicated. So again, let's get it clear. I'll just write it very clear if you've got it in your mind. You miss out 3 tefachim from the ground, a tiny bit less than 3 tefachim. You put a rope. Miss out tiny bit less than 3 tefachim, you put a rope. Tiny less than 3 tefachim, put a rope. The thickness of the rope has to be a tefach altogether, plus 3 tiny bits. Look in Rashi. Rashi says, Shiur tefach. It's the third Rashi. Shloisha mashun. There has to be 3 bits more than tefach. Again, let's start from Mishnah again. As long as it isn't 3 tefachim gap. Once the 3 tefachim gap, it's no good. Shiur chavolim v'ovyot, the thickness of the rope. Yes, tefach, more than the tefach. How much more than tefach? 3 bits. Because if it's only 2 bits, it's no good. It has to be 3 bits more because you have to have a tiny bit less. Now, till now, we're talking about ropes. Ropes is considered in English is a horizontal. Now we're talking about vertical. Exactly the same you can do with vertical reeds. As long as it isn't 3 tefach. And then you've got love. Rabbi Yehuda says this heter that you're allowed to carry in this area is only when there's a group of people. There's a group of people, you use the area thoroughly. We once mentioned this about Karpov. The idea is Chazal allowed weak walls in a case where they're used for proper divas. But the place where it's not used for proper diva, and it's a weak wall, they didn't allow it. So Rabbi Yehuda says only if there's a caravan of people. They didn't say, every single person is allowed to rely on such a kind of wall. Now what? No, there they made a very special heter for in order to get water. It's a kasha had it because we make them, but there it's nothing there. It's even less because there you're not making sticks every 3 tvachim. You just make on the corners. And that's it. Comes along Rabbi Yehuda and argues. Kol mechitza she'eina shel shesi v'shel erev eino mechitza to Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda says you need to have both. So that is picture. That's the picture I mentioned before briefly. Kuf samech gimel. He holds that you have to have shesi and vertical and horizontal. A grid. Oh, that's a good word. A grid. One or the other. In fact, there's a famous Taz in Hilchos Sukkah, which really puts a span in the works of those who want to build a sukkah. And he says that Gabi Sukkah, you have to be machmir, they need shesi ve'erev. That means I don't know if you've ever seen it, a lot of people have canvas sukkahs. And what they do is they want to have, in case because the walls of the canvas sukkah shake in the wind, which is a problem. So what they do is they tie strings from one end of the sticks to the other, which is very good because then you've got lovot. The problem is that if you're like the Taz, you're going to have to do shesi ve'erev. You're going to have to tie strings both ways, which is quite a lot of work. The Maisa, it's only one shitta, not everybody agrees with the Taz. And second of all, it's debatable whether this flapping of the cloth is considered real flapping. One could argue that it doesn't really move at a proper distance. But if you really, really want to make all the shittas, you'll do shesi ve'erev in your sukkah, which is cloth. So you don't need to because you've got, first of all, most of all, you don't need shesi ve'erev. And second of all, you've got the walls themselves, which according to many is not flat. But Maisa, regarding Mov, we don't pass it, he says you have to have shesi ve'erev. So in our Mishnah, the Mishnah what?
The string itself is not the wall.
Why not?
It's a support wall. The wall is the cloth.
Well, if we say that the cloth shaking is not a wall, then we're relying on the string, that the string is the wall.
Putting the wall in place.
Is that what it does?
That's it.
No, I thought not like that. I thought the string is actually the wall. The string is the wall. Because those who are chosh, the cloth is the wall. So what we learned from this Mishnah? What we learned from this Mishnah, basically the halachas of Lovut. Both vertical and horizontal, we say the halachas of Lovut. That's the first thing we learned from Mishnah. We've also learned in our Mishnah 2 arguments. Rabbi Yehuda's shitta is we don't say Lovut except if it's a shayor, except if it's a caravan. That's the Chachamim argue and they say everybody can rely on Lovut. Second argument is Rabbi Yehuda says you can't rely on Lovut unless you have both vertical, a grid. You have to have a grid. According to the Chachamim, you don't need to have a grid. You can have one or the other. So 2 arguments. That means we know, we said this 100 times already, that if it's imid mubal apot, if you've got more panels standing up, and the majority of the area is blocked off, it is good enough. That's the picture we were showing before. If over here, if the gaps are very narrow, it's fine. Why are they fine? And what do we say the gaps are? Entrances. What would be the halacha? This is the question I asked right at the beginning of the shiur. That means, what happens if you have panels going horizontal and there's gaps in between? So, do you say, oh, it's Imid Bubala Poles? Imid Bubala Poles, we said, is okay. Or do you say, wait a second, Imid Bubala Poles, in this case, that's fine. Because everybody, what? Yeah, but the reason it's fine is because it's an entrance. But when you've got panels like this, there's no entrances. So then it's gaps. If it's just gaps, so then it's no good. Says the Gemara like this. Omar Abai Toshima. Now here we have a bit of a mathematical Gemara. Toshima. Shir Chavolim v'Ovyo Nesa Tefach. The thickness of the rope has to be more than a tefach. Shiur Kol Asor Tefach. In order that the whole thing should be tefach. If you hold that a missing panel is okay, if you hold a missing panel, as long as it's it's okay. Lomali yesa tefach. Why do you less than a tefach? Leavid pochus. Why do you more than tefach? Make it less than a tefach. Leavid pochus mishloisha. Vechevel mashu. Make a gap of 3 tefachim, less than 3 tefachim on the rope. Upochus mishloisha vechevel mashu. Make a less than 3 tefachim gap on the gap. Upochus ma'abo vechevel mashu. I don't know if you're going to make a picture of it. Oh, there's a picture Kuf Samach Dalet. Sorry, Kuf Samach Hey. Kuf Samach Hey. Look at picture Kuf Samach Hey if you can put it up. Oh, why not? Look at it carefully. You've got less than 3 and less than 3. So the first one, we say Lovud. Have you got the picture Kuf Samach Hey? If you got the picture, it's a very big help. Wait a second. Let's start slowly. The first gap is considered Lovud. So what is that? Like a full panel. We said before, Lovud is as if it's a complete panel. So you've got 3 tvachim thickness. 3 tvachim thickness panel. The next one is you've got 6 tvachim. So you've got 6 tvachim of wall. And then with over. Very good. So you've got it. Why hybrid? Oh. Right. So it should be fine. It should be absolutely fine. It says Abaya. What's the raya that the Mishnah didn't talk about such a case? What's the raya from the fact that the Mishnah doesn't talk about such a case? What do you prove from that? Why? The fact that the Mishnah didn't tell us that solution. The Mishnah instead told us a rope has to be a tefach thick. What does the Mishnah obviously hold? That you can't use it. Why can't you use it? Why can't you use it? What's wrong with it? The answer is because we don't say Omed Bubala pause when it's horizontal, only vertical, because by vertical, it looks normal. It looks like an entrance. No, again, you don't mix this by sukkah. There's no problem. Again, here you've got a nice 6 tvachim wall, because if we look at it over, there's a proper wall, plus a 4 tvachim gap. Omed Bubala pause, it's fine. Answer, when do you say Omed Bubala pause is when it's standing, when it's flat, when it's vertical, when horizontal. Oh, yes, of course you would. Of course you would. That's the story over here. What's the difference between that and over here? This gap over here, these panels, there's 3 tvachim, 2.5 tvachim gap, 3 tvachim, 2.5 tvachim gap, and without it. 6 and then do 4, yes, that should be also okay. Says the Gemara, the Gemara now says it doesn't work. Why does it not work? Where would you make the 4 tvachim gap? There's actually 3 ropes. So you've got 3 options where to make the 4 tvachim gap. Top, middle, and bottom. The Gemara is going to prove that none of these places will work. Why? If you make the gap, you've got there a few pictures over here. You can load them up if you want. Kuf Samach Dalet, Kuf Samach Hey, Kuf Samach Vov, Kuf Samach Zayin, Kuf Samach Ches, all of them. So also like this. Where will you make this 4 tvachim gap? Will it disturb you? No. Right. If you put it at the bottom, why won't that work? What's wrong with putting it at the bottom? Very good. So it's no longer, but you've got 6 at the top.
It doesn't work.
Why? You've got 6 tvachim, 3 from the top, and 4 tvachim from the bottom. Right. Okay, no, it doesn't matter. You've got 3, and then you've got a 4 tvachim gap. What's the problem with that? So what? You've got 3 on top, and 4 bottom. Gedim can't go through. Once Gedim go through, even if you've got a high wall, if goats can get through, that's not good. So therefore, Tatoi won't work. So that won't work. If you put it at the top, that means like this. This string on Kuf Samachay will be considered as if it doesn't exist. Why? Because above the string, you've got thousands of amas to the sky, which is gap, and 4 tfachim below. When you've got a panel which is on both sides wider than the panel itself, then the panel is considered not existent. Here, that means if you put the 4 on top, like that, no, the Gemara at this stage is now argue that it will not be okay. Why will it not be okay? Because from above this fence till the sky is all air, and below it is air, 4 tvachim of air, and therefore whenever you have a panel that on both sides the gap is greater than the panel is as if it's non-existent. We've had it once before, very briefly in the good days. It's both sides, because underneath it and on top of it, no, because there's a 4 tvachim gap between that rope which is at the top, that rope which is at the top. That means there's a 4 tvachim distance between that and the next rope. 4 tvachim is considered air, and above it, it's got 1,000 amas. So on each side of that top string, says what? Let's put it in the middle. So the Gemara says, that means, it doesn't work. Meaning like this. When do we say works? Is when at least on one side is Oimid Meruba. Look at picture Kuf Samach Vav, and you say like this. The middle is 4 tfachim. On top is 3, at the bottom is 3. So you've got 3, 3, and 4. 3 and 3 and 3, 3 and 3 is 6, which is Oimid Meruba Lapot. It's fine. But no. Each panel on each side is less than the poles. And whenever you have a panel where the space, the only way to make it Oimid Meruba Lapot is to combine 2 panels which are not next to each other. And that's the only way to make it Oimid Meruba Lapot. That also doesn't work. So therefore it won't work.
You got 3, 4, and 3. That's no good.
That's good. You're right. 3, 4, and 3 will not work by Oimid Meruba Lapot. It's as if yes, you're right. You're right. It will not work, and therefore you will not. Yes, you're right. It will not work. Yes, that's a good point. I never thought of it till now, but you're right. He's right. So you hear what he just said? That if you have panels 3, 4, 3, and then after that, gaps of 3 in between, let's say 3, it will not work. It will not work. Says the Gemara, if that's the case, what exactly was the case which Rav Amnuna was talking about? And Rav Amnuna, what was he talking about? Let's look at the picture. We'll do it outside first. Picture of Kuf Samach Zayin. This is the question. You've got a panel which is 4 and a bit. Underneath it, you've got 3. Underneath it, you've got 3. But in between, you made a small stick. So now, the space between the 4 and a bit and the 3, we're talking about a tiny bit less than 3. That means from the panel of 4 to the next stick is slightly less than 3. Since it's less than 3, we say loved. So you've got 7. 7 is more than 3, and that is Oimid Meruba. So therefore it's fine. So this case is okay. Now, what were the problems we said before? You didn't break it, Bob. You don't have the problem with doing break it, Bob, because you made a stick less than 3, so the goats can't get through. You can't say that you've got the avira on both sides will spoil it, because here the avira, the air below it is less than 3. So the fact that the air above it is more does not disturb it. And what?
On the picture.
Yes, that was. It's not necessary. It wasn't necessary. So therefore, that is the shaila of the Gemara. Do we say that works as Oimid Meruba Lapot? So the Gemara says, here they've got another picture of it. It's very small to see. Okay, but so the Gemara says like this. And I'm not knocking with it. Good. I see machzeles. You take a mat. They have a shiva mashu. It's got 7 and a bit. And you cut out 3, a bit less than 3. It's a bit less than 3. And then you put it less than 3 from the floor. Do we say that it works? He was asking the simple shaila of a mechitza tluya, which is a mechitza which is hanging from the air. Again, can you allow a mechitza which is hanging? Chazal only allows it by water. This is something that comes up a few times. We've had it before. Going back to the old school, actually, I must say, I noticed they put the picture in every time. Here, they only put it in the beginning, Kuf Chof Ches. If you've got the picture in Kuf Chof Ches, where the halacha is like this. Yeah, Kuf Chof Ches in there. But what happens is you've got a mechitza which is hanging in the air. So now, can you rely on it? So that was what Ramona Shaila, and the Gemara says, by water, to draw water on Shabbos, that's mutter. But for everything else, it is awesome. So again, let's get to clear what we've learned so far. We know that there's a concept of lovud. We had two machliks in our Mishnah. Lovud doesn't work by individual or by a group. And we had the question, do you need to have a grid or just one side of the lovud enough? The Gemara came along and Ramona said the Shaila, what would be the halacha if you've got panels missing horizontal, not vertical? The Gemara Abaya says from our Mishnah, it's clear that it's okay. Why is it clear okay? Because why do you need a rope which is the thickness of a tefach? Just do a rope less than a tefach and make a 4 tvachim gap. The Gemara explained you can't make the 4 tvachim gap in any of the 3 places. At the bottom you can't because goats will get in. At the top you can't because you've got the space of the sky, plus underneath it we'll get rid of it completely. In the middle you can't, because the only way that you'll have oimid mubala poles is if you have to combine 2 different oimids. To combine 2 different oimids to make it oimid and mubala poles, that we never say. So what was Rav Nuna Shaila? Also has 2 explanations. Either by mechitza tluya, which the halacha is we know that it only works by water. That was Ravashi's explanation. Or Rabba's explanation, or the Gemara's explanation is that we're talking about a proper mat, not with strings. And then what happened was you made a lovud of less than 3 plus another lovud of less than 3. Do we say that it's a kosher or not? The Gemara does not give us does not push it. More like this. In our Mishnah we mentioned the machloikas. Does lovud, does this whole way of sukkah work? Does it movi work? Does it work for individual or only for a kalva? The Gemara is going to explain that everybody agrees that it works. Everybody agrees, both Rabbi Yehuda and the Chachamim. They only argue into the limitations of how it works. We mentioned before, an area which is a base or sign, which is how many square amos, does anybody remember? 5,000 square amos. Very good. How big, how would you remember that? Because that was the size of the chotzer of the Mishkan. An area which is 5,000 square amos is considered base or sign. That area, Chazal were more machmir about it because it can be neglected and it's considered its own meshus, it's called kalfa. The halacha that you can rely on such a mechitza, this is a poor mechitza, you have to admit that when you're using lovud, it's not a very good mechitza, right? It's only using sticks. So when you have lovud, and I remember once walking with a Rav, have you ever been to Water Park Lake? There's an area you can feed the ducks. Children spend a lot of time there, right? When you stand there, if you look very carefully, what it is it's a... I'm talking about the area next to the play area. There's metal sticks, it's green as far as I remember, and each one's less than 10 centimeters apart. So it's loved, it's a mechitza. So what we're discussing is that considered a mechitza, it's a shvach mechitza, a good mechitza, because it's only working through loved. But at the bottom and at the top, there's another metal bar going across. The problem is that the lake itself could be a karfaf. And if the question is, if you say it's a shvach mechitza, is there a problem with karfaf? It's not an area which people use. People live on the lake, but people don't really live on Water Park Lake. Again, what? Again, the Gemara says like this: up to base or sign, if it's 5,000 square amas, we're more machmir. So let's see the Gemara's side. Probably do actually. We probably do, and then it would be okay. Because I don't know at the end. You have to have it at the end. Yes. Probably do. Yeah. No, I'm saying all the end. I don't know. Is it deep? I don't know. Okay.
Never tried.
The kifim, there's got a lot of signs not to swim. So the kifim bekonim v'chulu says the word b'shiyah and b'yachid lo. According to Rabbi Yehuda, you're not allowed to use it for individual. But Tanya, Rabbi Yehuda, even called b'chitzas Shabbos, the etir liyachid yos b'sasayim. You're not allowed to do more than b'sasayim. It's mashma than less than b'sasayim. It's okay. Answers the Gemara. Kedobam nachmen tima bibi ba'abai. Nitzach litlen kol sochon. Kol sochon over here means whatever size you want. Hachanami litlen nohen kol sochon to give them whatever size you want. Meaning like this. According to the Tanakama of our Mishnah, If you've got a mechitza made out of sticks, love with mechitza, it doesn't matter however big it is. It could be 1,000 amas, 10,000 amas, 100,000, it's okay. Comes the Yehuda says, no, it would be okay if it's a caravan, a lot of people. If it's an individual, only 5,000 amas, only basis sign, no more. Hey, Nachman, oh, it's now, come mechitza shenishal shesi be'erev, a mechitza which doesn't have both shesi and erev, ain't no mechitza. The Mishnah says, the Yehuda says, you have to have a grit. That both the individual and the public can rely on a mechitza made out of ropes, meaning made out of a lovut. By yochid we give a beis osayim. Shnaim if it's two people together, this is beis osayim. But shloisha if it's three people, nasa shiur is considered a group. When there is them by sheish, you give them 6. Diva beis Yehuda. As long as there isn't two saw, which is completely empty in the middle. Give them the whole area. Here they've actually shown you a base of sign ponui in the middle. Can you see the picture? I don't think there's a picture here. If you look over here, here you've got a mechitza made out of ropes, a shvache mechitza. So over here, there's no area which is empty. Here there's an area which is empty. How many pass it around? Yeah, it's not some major picture. So the more thing. Again, let's get it clear. If you get this clear, this is quite. What? Yes, I know. Yeah, it's not. He didn't try to make it artistic. He more tried to prove a point. Let's get it very clear. We actually have in our Mishnah 3 opinions. If you work it out, Shittas Tanakama is. It doesn't matter if it's one person. It doesn't matter if it's 3 people. If you have mechitza made out of ropes, it doesn't matter how big it is. It's okay. That's just Tanakama. Shittas Rabbi Yehuda is as follows: that if you've got a group of people, we don't care how big it is. If it's an individual, then you're only allowed based on Simon no more. Again, is it clear? Comes along Rabbi Yehuda and he's machmir a stage further. 1 person, 2 people, you're allowed based on sign. A group, you're allowed 6 saw. I'll say it again because we'll carry on with this a little bit and then we'll stop so it gets easier. Again, let's get it clear. According to Tanakama, a mechitza made out of ropes, it doesn't matter how many people, it doesn't matter what size, it's okay. Always okay. Shittas Rabbi Yehuda is 1 person, 2 people, you're allowed based on sign. 3 people, you're allowed as much as you want. Shittas Rabbi Yehuda, which by the way was the son of Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yehuda. So he's arguing with his father, and he said like this: I agree with you, father, that if there's only 1 or 2 people, you're only allowed based on sign, like you or Machmin, not like the Chum that say you're allowed as much as you want. I agree with you that if it's only 1 or 2 people, you're only allowed 2 saw. But you said that when it's 3 people, you're allowed as much as you want. I'm even more Machmin than you. And I hold you only allowed to have 6 saw and no more. For 3. What?
3 and above.
3 and above. Says the Gemara, Dorash Rav Nachman Mishum Rav Shmuel, Yochid by 1 person is in the base of sign, base 2 people is in the base of sign, Sholish Nasu Shiur, when is in base Sheish could do 6. So who is he going like? Whose opinion is he explaining? Obviously. What? He's going like a basic. Again, what were the 3 shittas? Wake you up tonight, 2 o'clock in the morning, and you'll tell it. Shittas Tanakama is, it doesn't matter how many people, it doesn't matter what size, and mechitza made out of ropes is fine. That's Tanakama. Rabbi Yehuda comes up, is machmir 1 step. For 1 or 2 people, only 2 saw, no more. 3 people as much as you want. Comes up, Rabbi Yehuda is machmir a stage further. 1 or 2 people, only 2 saw, like you, my dad, my father. But 3 people, you said as much as you want, no, only 6 saw, and no more. Comes along with Nachman. It doesn't say. I hear. So I don't know. I suppose I don't know. Comes along the Gemara, the Nachman, the Paskin like it's Rabbi Yehuda. So, well, why did you leave Rabbi Yehuda? Why did you leave the Chum and Paskin Rabbi Yehuda? But Shonkas Abba wanted to Rabbi Yehuda. How do I Rabbi Nachman Amoy Ale? Amoy in the olden days was meant a speaker, somebody that could speak very loud. So he asked somebody to get up and speak in front of him. I made a mistake. But this is the truth. Yochid is the base of sign. Shnaim nisem base of sign. Shloish nasa shov nisem kol sochon. 1, 2, you give them base of sign. 3, give them as much as you want. Whose shit is it going like now? Rabbi Yehuda, which is good, not so good either. Find the Gemara. Reisha, Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Yehuda. You start off with Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Yehuda, because the Chacham say you're allowed as much as you want. The Sefer Rabbanon, but the Sefer is like the Chachamim, which is that you're allowed to have as much as you want. It more could have said it's Rabbi Yehuda, and it's more and Mishum Dekarav should say. That means when it came to one person, he held that you have two people arguing with the Chachamim, both Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Yehuda, and his father. When it came to three people, there was only one person, and therefore he was Meikol. Again, Shittas Tadekama is, doesn't matter how many people, doesn't matter what size, ropes are good enough. Comes along Rabbi Yehuda and is machmir that by one or two people, you're only allowed based on sign, by three allowed as much as you want. Comes along his son Rabbi Yossi and he says that even by three people, you're allowed 6 or no more. Says the Gemara that he came and Rav Nachman went and paskund that by one or two people only based saw, by three as much as you want. Says, well, why did he leave the Chachamim? Answers, well, yes, because when he came to that part of it, he had two people on his side. He had Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda, and Rabbi Yehuda. So, up to 3. Once it came to 3, then he went according to the Rabbanon that say you're allowed as much as you want. Okay. So,
Right, but is Rabbanon not always right?
Yes, I know, but over here when you got 2 people inside to be machmir. Yeah, interesting, yes. This Gemara today was particularly hard. This morning I had a few people coming up to